All right, Jack, it's we're here. College football season is starting. Now, I before we talk about Florida State, Georgia Tech, or SMU Nevada, I need you to handicap the Hawaii Delaware State game that starts at midnight because no matter what happens, we all know everybody's betting that game. It happens all the time, right? Like I think about that every week. Like, man, I got to chase something at the end of the weekend, chase something at the end of the night, and it's like that Hawaii game on Saturday night is always a bet. But unless you have a play for Hawaii, Delaware State, we'll start Florida State, Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I do not have a play. I would lean Hawaii. I mean, I don't think the Hornets will be stinging. The Delaware State Hornets will be stinging in Hawaii, but that is not one of my picks now.
It's funny though because as the what we're in all seriousness, I'm gonna get that out of the way because the last thing, if there's message, if we're gonna end up preaching, I know it's gonna sound preachy throughout football season, but do not chase. Like whatever bets you're gonna make, you're gonna make. If you're gonna lose, you're gonna lose. But do yourself a favor and don't lose your bet and then decide I got to get my money back because you will end up be betting like what Colorado State, Hawaii, Idaho, those great Mountain West teams that end up playing at 10:30 on a Saturday night. So do yourself a favor, try to resist the urge. And the best way to resist the urge, Jack, would be to just have a winning day, right? Like just get off to a nice start. Then you don't have to chase at night. So, all right, here we go. Florida State, Georgia Tech. It's such a weird schedule. They basically are forcing you to bet the Florida State, Georgia Tech game because there's only three games tomorrow besides the Hawaii game. You have Montana State, New Mexico in the middle of the afternoon, which God help us if you're chasing that game. Good for you. And then you have SMU, Nevada at 8 o'clock. But Florida State, Georgia Tech, there's a ton of intel, there's a ton of opinions. Go ahead. The floor is yours. Point us in the right direction, please.
Yeah, huge fan of Florida State here. Every projection I've seen, I do use Bill Connolly's an ESPN guy. He came up with S&P Plus, which is basically a point-based analysis of where teams rank offensively, defensively, and special teams. And he has this game projected as a 19 and a half point game in favor of Florida State. And so that says to me that this line is very much undervaluing Florida State. They did lose a lot, but they didn't lose much from their ground game. And just kind of works out. Georgia Tech's ground defense, their front seven, is average at best. And so Florida State will be able to run the ball and run the ball very often. And I think they win by 20 plus.
Play devil's advocate then, because all I've been hearing, like the lines moved, right? It was 13 and a half. It's gone all the way down to 10 and a half. I want to bet against Florida State. I know that it's a popular thing to do, especially for people that consider themselves, on top of things as a handicapper to bet underdogs in general. What exact, give me, I know you went to Georgia. You're probably more familiar with Georgia Tech than the average person. Is their roster just not good? Because the quarterback's getting a lot of hype. I'm forgetting his name. I'm about to Google it, but what's going on
Yeah.
with Georgia Tech football?
Hayes King played at A&M for a bit. He's their
Right.
quarterback. They they gave Georgia a run last year. I mean, we ran inside zone probably 40 times, but they did keep it close. So respect to that. I would call Georgia Tech kind of like a fun, feisty team. And those fun, feisty teams usually keep it close for a quarter and a half, and then the floodgates open. And that's pretty much what I expect to see here. Georgia Tech might score first, they might score second to tie it back up, and then you're like, oh, we got a game. And then Florida State just starts playing smash mouth football. And there's nothing you can do about that. 6'5", 260 DJ Younglele running straight into the goal line every time. I mean, they're within the 3 yard line, they're scoring a touchdown.
What
Georgia Tech can't stop them.
what becomes to be Florida State last year, what made them so dominant on defense is once they had the lead, their pass rush, they didn't have to blitz a tremendous amount. They lose the top defensive end verse, but by all accounts, the defense is pretty solid this year. Is that why you expect this game to get out of control? Because Georgia Tech's going to have to throw, and then Florida State's pass rush gets to them.
I wouldn't be surprised. I kind of look at it the other way. I don't think Georgia Tech can stop Florida State. I just don't think their defense is good enough to stop Florida State. I think Florida State, I mean, Norvell is a phenomenal coach. They run a phenomenal scheme. I don't see a world where Georgia Tech can like keep this within a one-score game in the fourth quarter. And yeah, I mean, the line moved down to 10. It's minus 115 at minus 10 for Florida State, and that's the line I'll be taking.
And what about total team points? Is that you'll have your official bets out here a little bit later. We're recording this so everybody knows in the middle of the afternoon here on Friday. Picks come as soon as Jack has them, right? Sometimes you'll have picks all together, sometimes they'll be scattered. If you love Florida State minus the 10, have you looked at the total team points? Is that something you'll be considering?
Potentially. I probably not. Just because in the event of a blowout, like a Georgia Tech can't score blowout, Florida State might pull their guys early, and then they don't hit that total points because the backup's getting his first reps and struggling a little bit.
So if I told you the final score was 30-7, that wouldn't shock you. But if I also told you it was 20-6, would that shock you?
No, and it wouldn't shock me if it was 48-17 either.
Got it.
So those team totals and the total in that game, I think I probably will be staying away from. Maybe we'll check the lines tomorrow morning or later tonight and see. But extremely confident play in Florida State, especially at that -10 number.
All right. Well, you know what? The best part about this is it's a black and white business. You're entering the world of finance, insurance, literally the opposite of a black and white business. So that's what makes it so attractive, right? Sports betting to anybody and everybody that's involved with it is you get the instant results. You're either right or you're wrong. So Florida State will be your first game. Sounds good. All right, I didn't mean to like tease anybody. If they have some intel on Montana State, New Mexico, please go ahead. Is that your next game, or are we going to SMU, Nevada?
I don't have a play on Montana State, New Mexico. I really like what Bronco Mendenhall's doing down at New Mexico, but Montana State is a very, very good football team. And I mean, they're one of the best FCS teams in the country. And if I'm correct, it's the largest point total favorite that an FCS team has been over an FBS team ever.
There you
So
go.
that is something to note, but probably gonna stay away from that one. Don't know which way it's gonna go.
SMU is supposed to be good. They're in the ACC. It feels like this is somewhat of a Super Bowl for Nevada, right? Like it'll be their home opener. They're a huge underdog. Can they keep it close? I know most people don't want to lay this many points. It's all the way up to, I was looking at 26 and a half. The total's 55 and a half. I know you like SMU. What about this particular spot?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of SMU. I do find it very interesting that Rhett Lashley is actually going to play the backup. That is very interesting to me. I'm kind of curious as to why he would do that. And that makes me lean SMU even more because the backup guy, like he's wording it almost as if there's a competition between Preston Stone, the established starter, and then Kevin Jennings, the new guy. And it makes me like the spread even more because when Kevin Jennings comes in, he's going to want to lay the hammer down too. And so they're going to want to keep scoring even later in the game because the second guy's got a chance to prove himself.
That was the it's okay. So walk me through it. Preston Stone, starting quarterback for SMU, felt like he's entrenched as the starter. You're saying that your intel from what you're reading suggests that the coach for SMU is going to play the younger quarterback as well, kind of let both quarterbacks get a shot. Maybe he's trying to fire whatever his motivation is for it. Your point is both quarterbacks are going to be extremely motivated to run up the score. It's not like they're going to take their foot off the gas.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Um, and so that is also one of my plays. I had it at 26 and a half, might have been 26 or 26 and a half, but like it at either number. I think SMU wins by a lot.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Yeah, like I didn't say it yesterday because the line just felt even too much, which was probably a sign the Colts were gonna cover against the Bengals because it's like one team played their starters way more than the other. But I literally did that the week before. I don't know if you saw it on the Telegram chat. I did that with the Raiders. And it's like I know I don't even like the Raiders this year, and somehow Trey Lance looks like Dan Marino, and the Raiders are playing their starting quarterbacks and lose by 20 points anyway. So I'm like, all right, not doing that. And then that's what happens when you second guess it. Like you just go with your gut. Like if you're wrong the week before, who cares? All right, so you got two picks. Is there anything else for college football that you like, or what else is on your mind?
Yeah, I also like that under in that SMU game, 56 or 55 and a half. That's my third pick. I just don't know if Nevada can score.
But
That's
that would be, and that's what I'm going to challenge you on because that one of the things that I think makes us better sports bettors is when we we actually bet what we really think. So wouldn't that be a situation that you would consider the team total for Nevada? Just because you think SMU is going to try to score as many as possible, wouldn't you then be bitter if it's like 58-17, 58-13, if your intel is going to point you towards Nevada not scoring?
Yeah, I mean, potentially. The total set at that kind of 55, 56 number. So if SMU goes out and scores 56, fine. I'm happy to take the bullet there. But yeah, I mean that is something that I'm gonna have to look at. I'm kind of curious what their line is. I haven't really checked, but I know that Nevada is not a very good team on either side of the ball. It is their home opener, great, but SMU is just kind of a juggernaut. They were juggernaut last year. Even though they move conferences, they're gonna be very solid, especially with their ability to really get that NIL money coming in, because
So
obviously that whole Pony Excess story, and that's gonna come up here again because there's so much money in that school, and they're gonna be able to get some really good players, and
that's
that'll
why
show.
I feel like this is more of an indictment on Nevada. Like if they're decent this year, they should be able to keep this game close because they're gonna be super hyped. SMU basically leaves them to join the better conference, so it's easy to hype up Nevada. It is on the road. It's in Nevada. But yeah, one of the things that, because this could be a shorter pod, obviously there's only 3 games, and there's one other topic I wanted to get with you at before we go. But and this kind of leans into it, the best way we can help each other, probably in general, just like as being friends, is challenging each other, right? Like you don't need somebody to just say yes, 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 yes. And for sports betting, when I hear your rationale for something, most likely my response is going to be what I just said a few minutes ago. Like, oh, well, what about this bet? Because every time I'm getting somebody's opinion, whether it's yours or the next person's opinion on something, it's not that I'm fully listening to your opinion. It's almost like, did something you say spark something that I already said, or something that I was already thinking? Because now that we all have so much information, yeah, rarely, but in some cases, you will give us information that we didn't know. Like that SMU quarterback situation was something I didn't know. But by and large, I want to get to your conclusion. I like the way that your brain operates. So it's like by the time that you decided what you liked, it's like, are you sure you don't want to just do the under the team total? So I look forward to that conversation. But what I really wanted to ask you before we roll is, something came out the other day, and it made me a little bit nostalgic because when I was growing up, there was no FS1, so it was just ESPN, and SportsCenter was the main thing. So it was First Take or whatever Cold Pizza was on ESPN2, and that followed Mike and Mike from 6 to 10. And the Mike and Mike show I watched religiously. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And then there was, a little bit of, we're not sure exactly what the content's going to be. And over the years, it's just evolved into a 30-minute show here, an hour show there, put these two together. And the latest iteration of it is, Skip Bayless has gone into FS1. So FS1 just released 4 shows, like from 8 to 10, they got a show. Then they'll have a show from 10 to 12, 12 to 3, and then 3 to 5, or 3 to 5, and then 5 to 7. So 5 shows. And my point is not to talk about each specific show, but my point is, do you and your friends even consume these shows? Because I've gotten to the point where I've gravitated towards the podcast instead of just blindly turning on ESPN or FS1 as like just background noise. But I'm curious, like not just from a gambling perspective, but from a sports entertainment perspective, where do you even get your information from these days? Like you wake up and you want to listen or understand what's going on in the sports world. Do you open up ESPN.com? What do you do? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so kind of interesting you say that. I I kind of have it on in the background as kind of background music, TV, whatever you want to call it sometimes. And most of the time, honestly, that's really like the Pat McAfee show because it's always on TV every day. And it's just like good background listening, I guess. You look up, they say something funny, you laugh, you go back to doing whatever you're doing. The Skip and Shannon situation, that was pretty interesting to me. I used to like that show, actually. I used to
Okay.
watch that and like more for entertainment than knowledge. Like obviously, if something big happens, you're probably going to see it on Twitter, ESPN notification, etc. But the entertainment part of that was also good. Same with Colin Cowherd, but it was a little bit more informative. if we're getting to like the truly informative where I'm kind of trying to like kind of decide my opinions and like where I'm going to stand on this team and this conference and stuff, I watch or listen to Josh Pate, the Late Kick podcast, but Josh Pate regularly. And so that's where I get most of my information. His takes might be a little bit bold sometimes, but I mean, he's born and raised in Georgia, heartland of college football, doesn't show biases, and his information is very, very top notch. So that's usually where I go for like actual information and insider info.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like the reason why data, and then I'll let you roll on this. Like the reason why data is it's the biggest commodity right now, right? Like every company that has data, that's like what you want to try to predict what people are going to do, so you know how to market to them and all that kind of jazz. And the reason why that's so valuable is because it's really hard to figure out what people are doing. There's so much ways to get information, so many different things that yeah, just was kind of curious because I've gravitated away from it. I don't have a cable bill anymore, so I don't even turn it on. I tend, for whatever it's worth, I just find the local beat reporters. I hate saying this, but like I'll always forget their names because it's like kind of one ear and out the other. But I just will focus on reading their articles or listening to a podcast of somebody that follows the team. Like that just to me is where it starts. I don't have anybody nationally. I guess if I had to pick somebody, I would regularly say I listen to the Ryan Russillo podcast and the Bill Simmons podcast. So the Ringer, if he brings somebody new, I tend to think, okay, I think it was Ben Slowak or Solik broke down the game. That's what I'm saying. I forget to give these guys credit, but a lot of the local beat reporters, what they'll do is they'll actually watch the film of the game, especially football, where if you watch it on TV, you don't see the all 22 cam. So a beat reporter that watches it and then is able to then give you his insights that's where
Yeah.
exactly. So I do think it's easier to bet on sports in that sense now that there's more information. But as I always joke, it's the same thing as politics, where if you're not careful, you'll get misinformation or led in the wrong direction. And then you'll be screaming at the top of your lungs about something that makes no sense. But all right, we'll do that at another podcast. Jack, this was good. You're on the clock, man. You're on the clock. You had a fake test, I guess, in the middle of the spring as we tried to do a little basketball, but you told me you were ready for football season. So here we go. Black and white. You'll get graded accordingly. I'll see you next week. Next week should be a ton of fun. We got like a handful of marquee matchups, so we'll dive into them. And that's basically what this podcast will be: meat and potatoes of college football. When the NFL season starts, we'll throw that in as well. But we're going to focus a lot on college football here. So have a great day. Did I leave anything out, or are we good to go?
No, good to go. Last thing I'll touch on, kind of to conclude that SMU Nevada deal. I went and checked my notes here, and Nevada allowed 41 sacks, 118th in the country. SMU's defense totaled 47, which was second most in the country. And so that was kind of my baseline from that. Yardage, same idea. SMU allowed some of the least yards in the country, obviously playing in a different conference, and then Nevada allowed the most. Like these matchups favor SMU drastically on the defensive side of the ball, and then on the offensive side of the ball, obviously that it kind of backs the spread because they're going to try to run up the score regardless. So
appreciate it. I appreciate everybody listening. Good luck to whatever you do. If there's any questions, if you ever hear anything that we're talking about that you're like, hey, that didn't quite make sense, or I wasn't quite sure, just shoot me a message. I'd be happy to answer it right away as quickly as I can. And all right, well, good. Hopefully the Orioles find a way to get on track. I feel like I make public service announcements after every podcast about the Orioles. They've obviously been stressing me out. So anyway, all right, Jack, take care, man. I'll see you next week. Good luck, everybody. I'll see you guys Sunday. All right, see ya.